Once again, we're joined by Dr. Mark McKenzie. Now, Dr. McKenzie, tell me a little bit about the limits of the Commerce Clause as we've seen in the most recent case, USA versus Lopez.
So in the U.S. versus Lopez case, actually the most recent case is the healthcare law, but U.S. versus Lopez returned the court to a sort of a balancing act between the Congress's Commerce Clause power with regard to the Wickard case. In Wickard, after the Wickard case in 1942, it seemed like the federal government's power had no bounds. It was boundless. Just about anything, it seems like, could be a regulation of commerce. What United States versus Lopez does in the 1990s is the court comes back to the Commerce Clause and puts restrictions on Congress's and the federal government's Commerce Clause power. And in that case, essentially, a juvenile had gone into a school zone with a handgun, with a gun, and was arrested. And the federal authorities prosecuted him in federal court. And he took his case all the way up to the Supreme Court. And the argument was Congress had passed a law, probably because citizens wanted Congress to pass a law saying, no guns in a school zone. The problem was Congress didn't pinpoint to what part of the Constitution they relied on for that power. So Congress said, well, we're going to rely on the Commerce Clause. This is our power of regulating interstate commerce, of outlawing guns in a school zone. The problem was that Lopez had not crossed state lines when he went into the school zone. He had not purchased his gun out of state. And there seemed to be no relation to economic activity in terms of Congress outlawing this activity. So Congress responded, well, if we have the authority under the Commerce Clause to make guns illegal in school zones, because if there are guns in school, children will learn badly, and if they learn badly when they grow up, they won't have as good of an education. If they don't have as good of an education, they won't be able to get a very good job. And if they can't get a very good job, that will hurt interstate commerce. And the Supreme Court basically responded to the federal government's argument that is way too far removed from Congress's power to regulate commerce. And so what the Supreme Court did in the Lopez case in the 90s was take back or claw back a little bit of the power of the Commerce Clause that Congress had taken in the Wickard case and given it back to the states. The Supreme Court basically said, this is a state issue. If you don't want guns in a school zone, you need to go to your state legislature, and they have the authority to pass those laws. But there's nothing specifically in the Constitution that gives Congress the power to regulate this activity that's not really an economic activity. And so the Supreme Court is essentially saying, look, the Constitution is still a limited document. It only confers limited powers on the federal government. And the rest of the powers are either reserved to the people or the states.
Which that's question, and correct me if I'm wrong, but that's a similar question that's raised with the healthcare law, correct?
Yes, with the healthcare law, and that's why there was such a huge debate with the healthcare law, because this similar type issue was raised. Can the federal government force someone to go out and purchase a health insurance plan? Now, the way that case ended up turning out is President Obama's healthcare plan was upheld. But it wasn't upheld on the basis of Congress's Commerce Clause power. Rather, the Supreme Court upheld that particular law because they said it was a valid use of Congress's taxing power. Because if you didn't buy a healthcare plan, you were taxed, I think $2,000 or something like that. And so that law was actually upheld not based on Congress's Commerce Clause power, which is still limited under Lopez, but rather upheld under their taxing authority.
Excellent. Well, once again, we thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
All right.